Hi, my name is James Latruglio, and this is my ChallengeNine circular buffer simulation. First, we have a struct that I use to define a cell in the buffer, and then it has a next, which points to the location of the next cell in the linked list. Then I have the variables for the simulation, as well as the producer and consumer functions. And then I also made a mutex just around the shared variables so they didn't cause any inconsistencies. All right, then we have the prompts. We get the buffer size. I use this integer num empty so the producer can know whether or not there's enough room for its burst size. And then I have, we get the burst length and we get the length of the sequence. And then we create the linked list, the buffer. And so I make the head first on its own and print it out. And then I do a loop for the rest of them, assigning the index to the incremented value, the data all to -1, and the next cell is the previous one. So cells next is the one that this iteration is creating, and then it assigns cell to the cell that was just created and prints out all its information. And then finally, at the end of the loop, it checks if it's the last cell in the buffer, it's going to assign its next to the head, so it's a circular buffer. Okay, so I have the producer and consumer threads and that mutex. Then we start those, and then this is the print that it's completed. And then the functions for the consumer and producer. This basically sets this cell to the head, and then we check and make sure the counter, which counter starts at 0, and we're just checking to see if it's hit sequence yet, and that's going to be incremented each time. If the sequence is still continuing, the loop continues, and it checks to make sure the cell it's currently on has a data of -1 to mean there's or not -1 to know that there's something that has to be consumed. And so if it is not -1, then we're going to print out what the data is that's being consumed, and then we're going to set the data to -1. And then I lock the mutex, increment the shared variables, then unlock it, and then assign cell to the next one. And then I sleep for that amount of time. 5 nanoseconds, I think, milliseconds. Okay, then the producer, similar. We start out with cell being the head, and then we check to make sure the counter hasn't hit the sequence length yet. And then we check to make sure the number empty is at least equal to the burst length. And if it is, then we're going to go a loop for the burst length. And then each time it's just going to check that the sequence isn't over yet. And as long as there's enough room and the sequence isn't over, it's going to create a random integer, and then it's going to print all the information. And again, it locks the mutex, just increments the counter and decrements the number of empty cells, and then unlocks it, and then it assigns cell to the next cell, and then it again sleeps. Okay. And I'll run it. And the size is 6. The burst length is 3. And the sequence is 30. Okay. Yeah, it produces 84, 87, 78. And then the consumer does 84 first, 87, 78. This is the initial linked list. And yeah, that's everything. So thank you.